The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is absolutely crushing leftist liberalism. And this is coming from leftist liberals. They're in an utter panic that they're becoming an endangered species in nationalist populist Hungary. So we're going to take a look at the latest measures taken by the Orban government that's doing nothing less than ensuring the gradual extinction of left-wing liberalism from within their nation. I think you're going to absolutely love it. But first, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's BioTrust Collagen. You know, many health experts now agree that consuming collagen is as crucial as it gets to renew and revitalizing how you look and feel. It's being touted really as the greatest supplement to ever hit the market. It can do wonders for reducing wrinkles, strengthening hair and nails, supporting healthy pain-free joints, reducing cellulite, boosting metabolism, dropping those unwanted pounds. Now, I encourage you to watch the free video at my site, healthwithsteveturley.com, or simply click on the link below to learn about how to go about choosing the right collagen for you and the proper way to use it. That's healthwithsteveturley.com. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. You're going to love it. I'm sure many of you are familiar by now with the outcries and the hysterics coming from the corners of our increasingly shrinking globalist elites regarding the special powers that have been granted to the nationalist populist Prime Minister Viktor Orban by the Hungarian Parliament to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. The so-called coronavirus protection law authorizes the Orban government to take any and all measures deemed necessary to deal with the pandemic until the state of emergency has passed. And perhaps most controversially, this involves decretal powers by the Prime Minister, where Orban can respond to the virus by measures invoked by decree without any parliamentary vote. It's what we would consider a kind of wartime power authorized for the Prime Minister. Now, you would think that given the threat of the virus, such a measure would be relatively straightforward. But the international outcry has accused Prime Minister Orban of becoming a de facto dictator. At the very beginning of this, there were actually leftist globalists out there that were claiming that the Hungarian parliament had been suspended and that they got rid of any future elections, which turned out to be a total lie. The Hungarian parliament has, in fact, not been suspended, especially given the fact that Orban's political party, the Fidesz party, has a supermajority in the parliament. So why on earth would the prime minister suspend a parliament where his own political party has over 2/3 of the seats? They own the parliament, for heaven's sakes. Moreover, the Hungarian parliament has the right to suspend these temporary powers that they've given to the prime minister anytime they see fit. So there are clear checks and balances still in place here. Nevertheless, the fact that Orban has gotten so much power has caused consternation among our globalist elite. And one of the cries of hysterics that turns out to be very, very true is just how effectively Orban is crushing left-wing liberalism in Hungary. Now, one of the latest panic pieces to come out was featured on the ultra-left website Jacobin.com, and it's entitled, "Viktor Orban is using the coronavirus emergency to crush minorities." Now, anytime you hear that term, minorities, from leftist corners, it is always referring to some kind of cultural Marxism. Always. It's technically referred to in the scholarly literature as emancipatory politics, okay? Emancipatory politics is a globalist-inspired leftist political idea that re-envisions the state as a grand liberator of people groups who are now considered to have been otherwise disenfranchised from the political process. And so what proponents of emancipatory politics deliberately try to do is to dismantle, indeed destroy, the dominant culture that has characterized the nation for centuries in order to replace it with a new culture of the aggrieved, an amalgamation of constantly reinvented minorities, all of whom claim some kind of discrimination and oppression from the majority culture, and therefore it needs to be destroyed. Now, obviously, emancipatory politics stands in stark contrast to nationalist politics, what we call here on this channel simply nationalist populism. Nationalist populist politics all have in common a mutual commitment in reasserting their respective national sovereignties through strict border security, economic nationalist policies, and the revitalization of their respective civic and religious traditions and customs. All nationalist populist governments are in the process of in some way destroying globalist cultural Marxist tendencies and policies, all the while reaffirming the cultures, customs, and traditions that have comprised their respective national identities for centuries. And that is what these leftist liberal pundits are so horrified over with the Orban administration in Hungary. As they are readily admitting, Viktor Orban is effectively destroying leftist liberalism from within his borders. First and foremost, Orban has threatened to imprison any so-called journalist guilty of spreading fake news. Now, what he seems to be doing here is responding to the ineptitude of the legal system to hold left-wing activists disguised as journalists accountable for their blatant anti-conservative cultural Marxist bias, which, as we've seen in the United States, has just gone into hyperdrive since the coronavirus pandemic. Just think of the absurd antics of CNN's Jim Acosta and his comrades in the media, who've turned out to be far more akin to hecklers than reporters during the coronavirus task force press briefings. Orban is he's not even remotely tolerating any such nonsense. Hungary is in effect declaring itself a fake news free nation. Secondly, and as we reported in an earlier video, Orban's nationalist populist government is actually indeed in the process of taking over the arts and fumigating any trace of cultural Marxism from them. In fact, Orban sees the revitalization of the arts as central to revitalize Christian Hungary. An interesting side note here is that Hungary's government spends more on culture and the arts than almost any other nation in Europe in terms of its gross domestic product. Hungary spends about 3.5% of its GDP on the arts. Most European nations about 1%. So the Orban government is taking the role of recovering Hungary's culture very, very seriously and has announced that they're setting up a national cultural council headed by a government minister and with the task of setting priorities and directions to be followed in Hungarian culture with the revitalization of Christian culture. And the important point here is that the minister would have a role in hiring and firing particularly theater directors at institutions that receive state funds. Now, of course, if this were done by a secular globalist left-wing government expressly to kick out the last vestiges of the influence of the Christian church over the theater, left-wing liberals would be applauding such a move. They'd be celebrating the triumph of artistic freedom of expression, even though it would be the exact same thing. If they saw a state minister come in and fire, say, Catholic bishops and conservative theater directors, they'd be all for it. But because this is a thoroughly traditionalist and nationalist effort, it's the opposite. Well, then this is nothing short of the greatest assault on artistic independence and creativity and freedom the world has ever seen. Nonsense. As we pointed out in an earlier video precisely on this topic, the great Nobel laureate Alexander Solzhenitsyn believed that all artists were under a moral obligation to reveal to humanity the true, the good, and the beautiful, so as to awaken our loves and desires and draw them into eternal and divine life, and thus realize humanity's highest flourishing and aspirations. This is the responsibility of the artist. This is what true freedom is, the capacity to fulfill their divine obligations to awaken within the human person the most laudable and excellent and praiseworthy attributes of our humanity, and thus realize what it means to be most truly human. And Solzhenitsyn was very, very clear on this. Western artists, in selling their souls to left-wing liberalism, had by and large abdicated this sacred responsibility. There's nothing freeing here in abdicating the responsibility of awakening humanity's most noble and lovely and praiseworthy virtues. And that is precisely what Viktor Orban is seeking to revitalize throughout the aesthetic life of Hungary. So that's the second major way in which he's crushing left-wing liberalism. And thirdly, as lamented by this article on the Jacobin.com, Orban has approved of legislation that would force transgender people to have to affirm the same gender as designated on their birth certificates, as well as a complete and total ban on so-called gender reassignment therapy and surgery altogether in Hungary. Now, this ban on transgenderism is on the heels of the Orban government's massive pro-life efforts, at reversing Hungary's devastating demographic decline, which, as our last video reported, has been enormously successful because of the pro-life measures taken by this government here in Hungary. Marriage rates are the highest they've been in 40 years. Birth rates are the highest they've been in 20 years. All the while, divorce rates have dropped dramatically. So everywhere you look in Hungary, it really does appear as if secular leftist liberalism is being destroyed, crushed under the enormous weight of a renewed conservative civilization. God bless Viktor Orban. Now, before you go, you definitely want to check out the video I just uploaded on Nancy Pelosi's Marie Antoinette moment. She absolutely embarrasses herself on national television. And let's just say you're going to absolutely love it. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.